Hey, Dennis.
Hey, Grant. Hey, Dennis. Hi, Christine.
Hey, everybody.
Hello.
Hey, everybody, hang on one second here. I'm getting all this together. Had to start the YouTube streaming, which always takes a second. Christine, you're now the co-host,
Oh, okay.
and I'll make Grant the co-host also because he's good at letting people in, among other talents.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry, I'm running a little bit late today. My grandson from London is visiting, and it's pandemonium here. He's 20 months old, and I'm exhausted just watching him. It's just amazing. I don't know how I ever did it with two kids. I truly don't. God bless you all who are dealing with it. That's all I can say on a daily basis. So, all right. Well, thank you, Christine, appreciate you coming and joining us today.
Glad to be here.
All right. We're wait just a little bit longer for a few folks to come. And I think while we're waiting, I'll sing your praises a little bit. So Christine has addressed our class before, and she's done some amazing things also, including I don't know what you call them, I guess studies or reports for companies so they can get a good idea where they stand, kind of almost like an audit, as well as building awareness of what types of things they could be doing. So we're hoping that will become available again in the future. It was really, really helpful to a lot of our companies. She has forgotten most of what I know about branding. She's really good at this stuff. And I know we've had a little bit of exposure to branding from our Techstars material, but this will be additive and different. And I think everyone's really going to enjoy it. So with that, Grant, if you'll keep your eyes peeled as more folks come in, I'm going to turn it over to Christine and be quiet for a long time, I promise.
Okay, let me see if I can share my screen, my PowerPoint slides. So I think I've got them ready to go.
Working.
Excellent. So let's see, get it to the slideshow and we should be good to go.
All right, thank you.
And I always hate with Zoom, I can't see myself or anyone else. So I apologize if I make a funny face because I just can't tell what I'm assuming I'm like in the center of the screen too. So
Christine, if you do you see the word view in your upper right?
No.
Okay. You should be able to control what you see, but I can't. Grant, can you think of a way to help Christine? I don't know how to.
All it does is it gives me when I share my screen, it goes to like the entire. I don't use Zoom normally. We use WebEx, and so it just gives me the entire PowerPoint. But
yeah, you have a choice of what you share. So that's just a setting on your share screen. You can share just the PowerPoint and et cetera, et cetera. But that'll be for another day.
Okay. Well, I think. Oh, so still sharing?
Yes. No. Okay. Now you're not.
No.
That's it.
Okay. Hold on. Let me see what I did wrong.
Somebody want a lot of medals running up there. I can see behind you.
Yeah, my husband used to run marathons, so his mom would put all of his medals and everything. He doesn't.
Very
do that
cool.
anymore.
He can come over and chase after my grandson. I think I need somebody at that level of fitness to keep up with him.
Well, the nice thing is it it's a nice view for the background meetings. So. Yeah. All right, let's try this again. I'll share my window. This.
Got it.
Yeah. Okay, from the beginning. Okay, so still just see the slides, but that's okay. So I just want to introduce myself. I'm Dr. Christine Kowalczyk. I'm an associate professor in the Department of Marketing and Supply Chain Management at ECU. I just started my 11th year at ECU. And just give a little bit of a background. Got my undergraduate degree in public relations from the University of Georgia. I worked in PR in Atlanta for several years. And then I decided to go back and get my MBA in marketing, again, at the University of Georgia. When I graduated at a bad time in the economy. So I taught classes at some local universities. And then I decided that I wanted to go back to school and get my PhD because I really enjoyed the teaching aspect. I've always had I went to the University of Memphis for my PhD. And then when I graduated, I came straight to ECU. I have a strong interest in branding. I could talk about branding all day long, but I'll present to you kind of the thought process on how you can tell your story by creating your brand. And I know that probably some of the companies are at different levels, at different offerings. But if you have any questions, feel free to either interrupt, or I've got it shortened enough where we should probably have enough time at the end to open it up for questions. But first off, I want to kind of start off with telling you what is a brand. And a lot of times when we think of a brand, we think of the actual logo. So for many, we create a brand logo that will show who we are. So that's our identity. But brand is more than that. It ultimately becomes your image. So it's how you're perceived by consumers. And so when we add that identity with the image, we come up with the brand. And it's really important to understand how we develop our brand, because it really can impact all different interactions with your business. And it really helps to set us apart from our competition. So when you think that in mind, when we talk about it today, again, we're not just talking about the logo, but we're really talking about the image that we're going to create in the minds of the consumers. So I always like to start off with this study by Interbrand. I've been teaching since 2002, so I've been following this study since then, and it's always interesting to see how the brands have evolved. But the question is, what is the best global brand? And according to Interbrand, they're a public company. They have to be in at least 3 different countries. They have to have, as I said, a global presence. They look at the financial information as well as consumer information about the role of the brand and the brand strength. So I'll kind of open it up a little bit to ask the question of, who do you think is the best global brand in the world?
Coca-Cola, maybe?
Coca-Cola is a good guess, and for many years they were number 1 on the list. And probably in the past 5 years, some other companies have kind of surpassed them. Anybody else want to take a guess?
Apple.
Amazon.
Apple and Amazon are good guesses, because Apple's number 1 and Amazon is number 2.
Wow, cool.
You know, and Coca-Cola is number 6. As I said, for years they were number 1 on the list. When they got knocked off several years ago, the CMO, they interviewed the CMO of Coca-Cola, and they said, "Are you upset that you're not number 1 in the world anymore?" And he said, "No," because he's like, "We're still, if you look at the list, we're the number 1 beverage company in the world." So, so it wasn't people weren't, you know, Coca-Cola, while they were disappointed not to be number 1 brand, you know, they're still in that top 10, and considered still the number 1 beverage brand. But if you look at the list, there's some interesting things. A lot of the companies in this global brand list are American companies. A lot are technology companies. And it's kind of interesting when you look at like Facebook and Instagram, social media sites have made it into the top 30. They will announce this list again, usually end of September, early October. So I always like to see where companies fall, and you know, if Amazon can take over Apple. But this gives you an idea of companies that do branding well. You know, it's well researched, well documented through this study of companies that have really developed a brand on a global sense. And I know a lot of companies, your company might not want to be on a global sense, but it gives you an idea. You can look at, you know what these companies do for branding or for advertising, and you can kind of think of, you know, what you could do to emulate how to become a good brand within your brand category too, or your product category. So I want to help you to understand what makes a brand strong. And we'll talk about 3 terms, consistent, compelling, and clear. when we think of a strong brand, they are always consistent. They're going to fulfill your expectation every time you have an experience with that brand. And I always give the example of McDonald's. When you go to McDonald's, whether it's here in North Carolina or across the country into California, you know what you're going to get. You know what the menu items are going to be. You know pretty much what the store or the restaurant's going to look like. You know, you have this expectation of what you're going to get from McDonald's, and it tends to be pretty consistent. Next, it's compelling. So when we have a strong brand,
I was just going to add a comment about McDonald's. You can also expect the milkshake machine to be broken.
Yeah, that's been in the news, I heard.
Yeah.
And all of this, I'll have to preface too, is probably pre-COVID also. So the pandemic has definitely changed some service experiences, but from the most part, we have these expectations with our brands prior to COVID. Some of us have to have a little bit more flexibility now with our brands. But the second, it's compelling. It gives us a reason to choose that brand over the competition. So usually the strong brand comes with certain attributes or qualities or even an emotional attachment, and it's compelling enough for us to choose it over the competition. And then last, it's clear. So when we see the brand, the logo, or we hear the brand name, we understand who that brand is and what they represent. And so we want to make sure that we're very transparent with our branding. The word authenticity really comes up to marketing a lot now. So we want to make sure, though, that we represent who it is that our consumers want and who it is that we want our consumers to see. So we're going to really talk about this in 3 stages. And at the end, I'll show you the book that this is based off of. And it's something I encourage you to read because it gives you this brand blueprint. There's these 3 steps that help us to really develop and think about what our brand is and how we can develop our brand. So the first step is the story. We're going to talk about who, what, where, when, and why. Next, we're going to talk about the niche. So we'll look at customers' needs, the values, our peers, and our positioning. And then lastly, we'll talk about the image. We'll briefly talk about the logo, the tagline. And I kind of took out some of the other information because it's really just thinking about how we can create that image in the mind of the consumer. So when I talk about what's your story, it's really important to think about what's unique about your brand, what's unique about your product or your service. And every company has a unique story. I give the example of Coca-Cola and Pepsi, and they all have some unique stories. Some of you might be more familiar with the story of Pepsi. They started in New Bern in 1893. They were called Brad's Drink. They were sold at a drugstore in New Bern, and it was based off of a recipe with cola nuts. Now, Coca-Cola has a similar story, but theirs is still different. They were founded actually in 1886 by a pharmacist in Atlanta, and he just wanted to create this distinctive soft drink that could be sold at the soda fountain at their pharmacy. So the stories of the history and the story of the brand can help to evolve the company can help to evolve what the brand is. And again, everyone has a unique story of their founding or the development. I used to work for a company called Autotrader.com. And the story that we always loved to tell was the business plan was written on a cocktail napkin. And so it showed kind of the simplicity of the technology company and how, they never took the time to write a big business plan. They just wrote, some ideas on a cocktail napkin. So when we create the story, we want to make sure that we're creating this unique brand narrative. And what we're really talking about that, again, is the who, what, the where, the why. Who are you? What are your values? What makes you unique? And again, it's all talking about that history and the evolution. And it's really important that companies spend some time writing maybe a 50-word brand narrative. So you can instantly explain to people, the evolution of your company or what makes you unique from your competition. Second, it's important to know your target audience. And a lot of times when I teach my students that, they're like, well, we want to go after everyone. I'm like, oh, you can't really go after everyone. You have to clearly understand who it is that you're going after. And that can be based on demographics, lifestyles, their behaviors. It's really important to understand who it is that you're trying to reach and what's the story that you're going to talk about. So who are the people? What do they do every day? What are their needs? And considering that target audience against your competition too. It's really great to support your story with data. And we live in a really data-driven world right now, but understanding what that information is and how you can use that information to really enhance your story. It's really important to create a theme in your marketing too. So when you think of advertising campaigns for big brands, usually it will revolve around a slogan or a specific theme that will help to identify with that brand. So I encourage you to think about based on that target audience, what is it, the theme that you want in your campaign? And lastly, it's really important to make it personal. So we live in a world with social media where people can respond very quickly to what they like and what they don't like about your organization. But it really can help you to enhance your story by telling it in a much more personal fashion. There's a statistic that says there can be a 5% value boost when you include that personal story and you even include an image. So a lot of times people are going to be more willing to pay more for a company that has created that personal element. So we're going to go into the next step, which is what is your niche or your niche? And really, we're looking at figuring out what the market needs. And that goes back to that target audience. So how do we clearly define what our place is in that product category or in that service industry? And then a lot of times, again, it's looking at who are we going to target? Who is it that we're going to go after? So that really comes down to who are your customers, understanding who your customers are. And as I said, it can't be everyone. So you want to clearly define, and you can have different customer segments also, but you want to be able to clearly define who these individuals are. Is there a certain demographic, a certain lifestyle? What is it that they buy? What are their needs, their wants? It's really important to understand what their problems are, what their needs are, and how we can be a solution for that customer. And I teach marketing strategy at the MBA level at ECU. We talk the entire semester about creating customer value. And it's not the 4 Ps anymore, but it's looking at our customers and what their needs and their wants are and how we can provide solutions to them. And really, some of that may be more personal, but a lot of times we're looking again on how we can create value so our customers are going to choose us over the competition. So when we create our customer value, it's looking again based on what might be special or unique. Again, looking at it against potentially what that competition is. What are unique characteristics? What are we doing that's different, that is setting ourselves apart and is having our customers come back? Sometimes we think that customers are influenced by just low prices, but that's not always the case. When you provide some value to customers, people are going to be more willing to pay a premium. So again, think about what's special about your company, whether it's the specific business, the product, or the brand, and helping to understand how we can create and understand what that value is that our customers keep coming back for. And then through that, we can create a value proposition. And when we look at the value proposition, we're giving our customers a reason why they want to purchase us. And a lot of times we create a value proposition against the competition. So when we create or want to learn about our customers, we can do things by creating dialogue with our customers, whether it's through your website or social media or email campaigns or doing quarterly newsletters. There's opportunities that we can create dialogues. There's a lot more like chat bots that are occurring on websites where you can instantly communicate with the company and get instant feedback. Yes, it's having to have someone be available, but it really enhances that customer service aspect. Companies are creating blogs and podcasts, and really there's a lot riding on influencers right now. And I'm not talking just about celebrities, but even just normal, consumers that can talk about your products and help you to learn more about what your customers' needs and wants are. So part of creating that story is helping to understand what your brand's purpose is. And when we talk about purpose, we're talking about why it is that we exist. Now, most of you are saying, well, to make money, to be profitable. And as I taught my students the other day, yes, all companies want to be profitable, but we need customers in order to get to profitability. So it's important to understand that we can communicate what our brand's purpose is. And that from the brand's purpose evolves our vision, our mission, our values, as well as our positioning. So our vision is, what are we trying to achieve? The mission is the plan on how we're going to achieve that vision. And then their values is, how do we behave? And a lot of customers are really aligning themselves with organizations that have similar values, that have a clear stated purpose, brand's purpose. So it gives them a reason to want to engage with that brand. And lastly, we look at our positioning, which is very similar to that value proposition that I've mentioned. And it's, how do we differentiate ourselves from the competition? And a lot of times it's really important to know what makes us unique, what makes us different from our competition. And we want to make sure all these things are clearly defined for our customers, so they understand what our brand is. So when we do define that brand purpose, you can see it's right there in the center. And what we're looking at is what is it the world needs, what are we good at, and then what are we passionate about? And that helps us define what that brand purpose is. If you ever took a marketing class, you probably learned of the 4 Ps: the product, the place, the price, and the promotion. And Philip Kotler, who is kind of the father of branding, really says that we need to focus on that purpose too. So it's not just about selling products at the right price, in the right location, and we advertise in the right places, but it's really helping our customers to understand why we exist, and what it is that we're providing to our customers. And that's that added value that I was talking about. And there's actually a study that says that nearly 75% of Generation Z believes that they want to work for a company that has this greater meaning than just making money, that they're really looking for organizations that have this clearly defined brand purpose. So part of that niche, as I mentioned, we want to know who is our competition. Sometimes we have similarities with our competition and we may have differences. And so we really need to understand clearly who our competition is. And we can categorize them in 3 different ways. Direct competitors, those companies do the same job in the same way. Again, going back to McDonald's, their direct competition is Burger King. Sometimes we can look at our secondary competition, and they're a company that do the same job, but maybe in a different way. And if I still look at McDonald's, we can compare them to Panera. Panera offers fast food, but a healthier option than McDonald's. And then the last one is indirect competitors. And those are the ones sometimes we have to be concerned about, because maybe they do a different job with a different type of outcome, but they might want to enter our marketplace. And I give the example again of McDonald's, but Weight Watchers. So Weight Watchers is going to provide healthier food options for you to lose weight. So McDonald's might not see them as a direct competitor, but they're there in the marketplace for people that want healthier options. So again, knowing who your competition is and segmenting them in who are direct competitors, secondary, and indirect are really important to helping you understand what your brand is and how your brand is being perceived in the marketplace by your customers. So the last part is looking at your image. And again, it's more than just that brand logo. And you can see, all the logos that are on the screen, you can easily recognize who they are and what it is they have to offer. But your logo is going to help you to represent your organization to the customer. And so really creating a logo that's distinctive, but also helps to kind of highlight and show what your business is will be very important to the brand success. I always tell my students it's really important to have this consistent look and feel for your brands. I give the example of Apple. A lot of their products have always had this kind of sleek design, and those are kind of some older looking Apple products, but you get the idea, and most of you are probably very familiar with what the look is of an Apple product. This same feel and look went into their advertising campaigns. So they always made sure that it was very simple, highlighting the products, kind of showing a little bit maybe of the functionality. I always kind of joke that Steve Jobs was very consistent in his look and feel too. He was always usually seen in a black turtleneck and blue jeans and sneakers. So, it came from the CEO all the way down into the product and the advertising. But it's important that once we define what our brand's purpose is, we have to really align ourselves with our employees as well as our corporate culture and our sales staff. So you want to make sure that everyone within your organization is communicating what that brand's purpose is. So it's not just the advertising department or the marketing department, but really you want your employees to live and breathe that brand purpose and really be able to communicate what the brand is to the ultimate customers. Now, we support all of that through marketing communications, through either an advertising campaign or direct mail or trade shows, social media or public relations and different events, or even through our website. But again, it all comes back down to what was that brand's purpose? How is that being supported internally by our employees, by our culture? And then how do we communicate that out and keeping that message consistent in all the different marketing communication avenues? Again, we can spend another session on talking about how we can communicate our brands in the marketplace too. But I can't leave you without talking about brand protection. So if you're going to spend the time creating a distinctive logo or a tagline, it's really important to understand the need to register that so that you have ownership of that logo, or looking at copywriting for written materials. Also, if your company has something that it would be considered applicable for a patent, you want to make sure you go through that process too. And again, looking at monitoring social media as well as the internet to see others that may be using your brand, or seeing what is out there about your brand. So taking the time to, and I know it's time consuming, but a lot of times we need to make sure that we're looking at what's going on in the marketplace with our brand so that we can respond in a way if there's some negativity out there in the marketplace. So that's the book that's on the screen that a lot of this presentation is based on. It's Donald Miller, Building a Story Brand. And he has a website too, but it really talks about going through the steps on how you can build your story brand, and really how you can, how your story, or excuse me, how your brand can be supported by the development of a story. And, it's really a great book. As I said, it kind of goes through the step by step, and they have a website too that I encourage you, if you're struggling with what your brand is, or taking your brand to the next level, or going after a different customer market, they can definitely help you through looking at those steps. I'm going to stop sharing. So are there any questions?
Do you think that smaller, maybe more local or regional brands, it's the same process as it would be for a big one like a Pepsi or some of the national? How does this translate to folks who maybe are, maybe a little more localized?
I mean, developing a brand, you have to understand what your market knows of your brand. And if it's something very new, you have complete control on developing that within the marketplace. A lot of times in a local market, we should be more aware of word of mouth. So we want to make sure that we're getting into, the customers that can share positive information. And a lot of times, as I said, we talk about influencers, but you can use influencers in a local market too. But having people on social media talking positively about your brand can definitely help you in a local market. And a lot of times, we have to make sure that we're responding to that negativity too, and not just assuming, oh, well, no one's reading it. Because doing the research at one time said, if you tell one person, that one person is going to tell 3 to 5 people. So you can kind of see how that potentially could spread quite quickly. And after the pandemic, we've had some negative experiences, and so people are more willing to share those negative experiences than those positive experiences. But word of mouth, social media can be used not just for your large brands. They can be much more beneficial, and they're really cheap options for local companies.
Okay. Anybody want to step up? Anybody have some questions for Christine? Quandel, I always call on you. You're good for it.
Great. Hello. I was generating my question mentally.
Sorry. Be ready, Quandel. Be light on your feet, buddy.
Yeah, right. How do you suggest, for instance, your business, you may be attempting to target a particular audience. However, when you look at the data, it sort of shifts from what you were expecting. How do you feel, what's a good way to go about, trying to say what was the best way to say this, determining that target audience?
I mean, understanding who your competition is can help to determine a target audience too, because you can be able to see, who they're going after. And a lot of times, websites, social media, you can more easily be able to identify who your competition is seen as their customers. But a lot of times, sometimes you might even have to take a chance too on, what's your product or your service?
Online apparel, use Shopify's platform.
Okay. And so you probably had an idea when you developed it of who you wanted to go after. Mm-hmm. So you want to make that's the easiest one, but you can also, if you're an online site, there's definitely data analytics that are provided online that you could probably be able to identify a little bit more of where your traffic is coming from. You could also do surveys trying to figure out more clearly defined of who is buying. And as I said, I tell my students, we need to make sure we're asking the right questions too, because a lot of times we may be asking questions to answer what we think or to confirm what it is that we want to know. So you have to think about asking the appropriate questions to more clearly define who it is that you may not realize. So always, reaching out to your current customers can help us to identify even future customers too. That help?
Yeah, it does. Thank you. Especially that last part about asking the appropriate questions, because sometimes we can get, I think, sentimental because you're so close to it that I'm asking the wrong questions. So that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah. How about Keisha? Keisha's got a kind of a new startup trying to figure out her branding. Any thoughts, Keisha? Questions? Okay. Might have stepped out for a minute. Anybody else want to jump in with questions about their brand?
About with music and branding in the Eastern Carolina, since we're not Atlanta or New York or LA, what's the best way to try to really brand artists and like music coming out the area to be seen from this area to the world?
Again, the internet and social media have definitely opened the world up to consumers and customers. A lot is, again, who are you trying to go after? You have to make sure that you clearly define who that target audience is and where that target audience is at. You know, my kids, I've got a 12-year-old and a 14-year-old. Now, they want to be on social media. One of them does. And I'm pretty much like, no, not yet. I know too much. But you have to, every generation has a different outlet that they go after. You know, I was watching something earlier today and they were talking about TikTok and their TikTok channel. And I'm just like, I just don't want to get TikTok. But I know other generations do. And my son's really like, all he wants is Snapchat. And I'm like, like, that's just not the one. But that's, you know, every generation has an outlet that they go to. And you have to know who it is that you're trying to reach and reach them where they're at. And so, and, you know, and sometimes doing word of mouth and buzz marketing, which, you know, different unique things, sometimes you just don't know what's going to hit and what's not. But that's kind of the cool thing about marketing is, you know, looking at potentially what others are doing and not necessarily mimicking, but learning on how you can evolve your brand based on what others are doing. I always say with marketing, we don't have to recreate the wheel. We just have to make the wheel a little bit shinier, right? Just a little bit better than the last guy. So we can always learn from our competition or even learn from other industries that have found success that you could adapt to your musicians.
Okay,
Does that help?
yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. I'm going to read you. Keisha is having some technical difficulties, so I'm going to read her question to you, Christine. She says, okay, I can't figure out my branding story. I have read articles, but haven't been able to pinpoint what makes my brand stand out from the competition. How do you start that process? And your presentation has been very helpful.
Good. You know, a lot comes back to you writing down and just spending some time evaluating, why did you start your company? How did you start your company? You know, thinking about how you tell that story. You can go to companies like Burt's Bees. They have, you know, look at some of your favorite brands and look at the history or company information. And all companies provide some type of story. Even your big brands will talk about their story. So, you know, I say look at what you like, and hopefully that will, you know, kind of inspire you on how you can talk about your story. But as I said, only you know your story, what makes you unique. But then also look at your competition. So when you look at your competition, well, why am I different than that company? You know, and there's got to be something. It could be you, the owner. It could be the product that you offer. Maybe it's some type of customer service. Maybe it's your packaging. But there's something that's got to be unique from your competition. It's just that you have to really spend time looking at it. And, you know, get influence from other people too. You know, talk to your friends, talk to your family, talk to your customers, because your customers will tell you what makes you unique, why they're coming to you. And if you are a startup and have very few customers or you haven't even developed that yet, you know, as I say, you talk to your friends and your family and help, you know, they're probably there to support you in your efforts. And they should be able to help you to figure out or define what that uniqueness is. But as I said, it's every company has something unique. In the past, I've talked about different stories of, you know, Apple and Microsoft all have unique stories, and that serves as their foundation. So think again about why you started. You know, you're trying, obviously you were trying to fill a gap. And so you identified a gap and you found some success. So really focus on what that gap was. I teach marketing strategy this semester, and I have a student who started a clothing site. I'm like, when did you start your, you know, how long has it been in business? She's like, I started it during the pandemic. And I was kind of like, well, that's kind of an odd time to start, you know? But at the same time, people were at home and they were in front of their computers. So it was an ideal time for her, she said, to start her business. And so, you know, that's part of her story of, you know, taking advantage of a unique time in our history. to be able to do something that she's passionate about. And, what are your passions? How can you communicate that as it relates to your company and your brand?
Okay. One question I have for you. So one of the things that our companies face is multiple marketplaces where they might be doing business. So they have their website, they might be on Amazon, many of them are on Etsy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Any thoughts about maintaining brand awareness or brand integrity across different channels?
Just keep it consistent. So what you say in one medium should be the exact same thing that you say in another medium. Now, depending on the target audience, because your message should be unique to that target audience. But a lot of times, as long as you're saying the same thing and showing the same thing and offering, and supporting what it is in the mediums, then hopefully it'll make the process easier. So you can kind of copy and paste, that content, or keep as long as you're keeping it consistent. As I said, the mediums, it's just a medium, a way to communicate. So if we take out the fact that it's Amazon versus Etsy, it's still the brand. What we're saying about our brand should still be the same.
Yeah.
And as I said, the customers may be different because one goes to Amazon because they want the 2-day shipping, another one goes to Etsy's because they think it's unique. Yes, but the message still about our brand, it shouldn't be different dependent on which medium we're going to. And again, I look at, think about competition that's out there. I mean, I would assume that they would be keeping their messaging consistent, and some may not. They might be like everyday low prices on Amazon, which I know is Walmart. And thinking Etsy, we can do higher prices. But again, just how we communicate our brands is more impactful if we keep the message the same. And is again, whether it's through a sales staff or through customer support, everyone has to be clear on what that message is and keeping it consistent.
Okay. Fantastic. Yeah. Anyone else want to jump in? Oh, I'm not going to let you get away with that. So, Doug Thomas, you're a good branding guy. You're thinking about this sort of thing. What do you have to say today?
Well, I am trying to keep it consistent, and it's kind of a hard thing to do across the different platforms and all, but I'm trying to keep it as consistent as I can. I feel like I've already established what the direction I want to go with my brand in.
And simple too. We don't have to, be verbose with information. Also, I think always the more simple the message, the more impactful it can be. So that's something I think that is important too, is as long as we keep it simple, then it may be easier to go across the different platforms also.
Yeah.
What is your company, Doug?
I do a compact modular martial arts weapons kit.
Okay.
So,
I think,
do what?
I said, I think you might have reached out to me.
I might have.
Yeah, I think,
Well,
and
here we
somehow
go.
I knew that.
All right.
I've reached out to a lot of people on it. So, but it's, I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible, because that's one area where, I can keep it simple and focus on other things. So I think I've got a good start on it. It seems to be going well so far, so I'm happy with it.
And
right now.
I encourage, as you're starting out businesses, focus one at a time too. So kind of think about how you can own one market or one segment, one target audience. It's easier to kind of focus and own than to say, oh, I can reach all these different people. So once you own one, you learn from that how you reach those individuals, and then you can adapt that target audience to another group of individuals. And then, that's how you kind of build your customer base. But trying to say, oh, I'm going to try to reach everyone, is going to be using a lot more time and effort than if we focus on specifically whether it's, one platform or, as I said, one group of individuals that have these kind of commonalities that we know would want our product, and clearly defining who those people are.
Okay, very
All
good.
right. Yeah, I definitely learned
ahead.
to limit the target. But mine is not for everybody, and it's not for every martial artist, and all this. So I definitely learned that.
Fantastic. Well, I have Grant Smith, who is our intern, but is also an entrepreneur, and his company won the Pirate Challenge last year. And Grant, I wanted to have you comment a little bit about branding as it relates to you, because you guys are actually selling to hospitals as opposed to consumers. So any thoughts on that, Grant?
Yeah, well, I was actually going to ask about that. We're kind of struggling to know where and kind of which aspects of our company to brand. So I didn't know if you had any advice on that.
Why don't you explain your product so she has some idea?
Okay, sorry. Yeah, so our idea is a hospital communications app. So currently they still have switchboard operators in the hospitals, and it's super out of date, inefficient. And with our app, you can look up the nurse, doctor, whoever the hospital employee is, find their like page number, telephone number, and be able to call in a very short amount of time. But when we've been doing kind of background research, social media and TikTok and stuff like that, it's not really kind of our aspect that we want to go towards. So I didn't know, like when it comes to in person, how can we do better?
Well, I was going to say, you're so specialized, and it's more of, I'm assuming you're trying to get into the hospitals first, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
That's the biggest. So right now it's more of a direct sell. So you have to clearly find and identify who in a hospital owns that responsibility, I would assume. And right now we're just a hard time in the medical field, the healthcare system is overwhelmed by the pandemic. Fortunately, family's been well, so we haven't had to be a part of it, but I would assume that the system, is a little bit harder because of what's going on in the world. So, it'd be more of a direct sell, but, kind of constantly networking through the system to figure out who that individual is. And, eventually you'll find someone, and you would assume then it may be consistent from hospital to hospital. And understanding what that sales pitch is on how to get that connection. But yeah, that's not a social media pitch by any means. That's more of, in my opinion, would be more of a direct sale, kind of a word of mouth through the organization of finding the right individual that would be able to make that decision for you. Which again, it would definitely be time consuming, but as I said, you should be able then to be able to track and figure out who it is consistently in different healthcare systems.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And my partner, fortunately enough, is doing his residency at Biden. So he's got kind of his group, and he's trying to network for us, which is definitely beneficial. But I agree, now is not exactly the best time to be kind of that up. And our big struggle.
Yeah, it's one of those things, like, we need it because we want to get to who we need to as quickly as possible. It's just that the challenge is people just being overwhelmed in the system. So, so you just have to, as I said, and if you look at maybe some of the larger hospital systems, that might be a way to kind of get into to have multiple hospitals under them. Starting that angle first, opposed to going, in the more localized hospital, looking at it from a bigger system.
Sure.
Grant, also, I think you might consider webinars or some sort of video presentation where you could get a number of people to who might be interested sit and learn about it and, contact you or give their contact information so that you can follow up. I think that's another, maybe a way to go instead of just a kind of incremental one by one.
And if again, yeah, creating short videos that you could then send and then ask to send on if they're not the appropriate person. We're more willing to listen to something or watch something than to spend time, hearing the pitch too. So that's a really good idea of doing more of kind of a direct campaign, marketing campaign through email on, hoping that maybe one would stick when, people are going through and, it's writing the right subject line in the email and writing the right copy that would entice them to click on that video or click on that information that goes to a website. Because, they want to simplify the process for their customers. But not necessarily understanding it. Yeah, maybe putting in some type of animated video or a person talking about it might actually be more beneficial so that they can then, come back and either follow up with you or you actually then reach out to them and say, hey, I sent this video. What did you think of it? And is this something that your hospital would use and could use?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great idea. And kind of our big kind of problem right now is no one wants to kind of be that first kind of test site, I guess. Like we're trying to do the trials and get the information and whatever, but no hospital wants to be like, all right, we'll be the kind of
Beginning
test
thing.
dummy, for lack of a better word, and have their kind of system be the one to have all the tests done. So that's kind of like what we're facing right now. But yeah, so that's definitely thank you.
Mhm.
And I was also going to ask, do you only do like MBA classes? Because I'm in the Miller School, so I'd love to take that course.
I've taught at the undergraduate level. Usually we have a persuasion class and advertising class. We call it IMC, Integrated Marketing Communications. But I've been mostly focused recently on teaching marketing strategy to graduate students.
Okay, I figured it was worth a shot.
Yeah. I'm teaching in the honors college next spring. If you're an honors student, I'm teaching a class on personal branding. So I look forward to getting that class evolved and hopefully offering it one day in the College of Business.
I am actually an honor student. So is it like a seminar class?
Yep, it's going to be offered in the spring.
Cool. I will definitely keep my eye out on that.
Perfect.
It fill up so fast though. It's never a guarantee, but I will definitely try and get in.
Good.
All right. Well, Christine, thank you so much once again for a very enlightening presentation and good questions. And really appreciate you reaching out to us and talking to the group. So.
And you can link or connect with me with LinkedIn. Dennis has my email address. If anyone has any questions, I do projects every semester. So I am always looking for projects. I'm kind of full for this semester, but if there's a company that, you're really looking for, some interesting insight from marketing students, and as I said, MBA level students, feel free to reach out to me because we'll have some project possibly opportunities in the spring. I do focus mostly on looking at customer value. So we don't create marketing plans, but we look at how we can look at our customers and create value for them based on the 4 imperatives from the textbook that we use. So, I'm definitely always open on helping local companies to be able to see what their customers' needs and wants are and how we can help them to achieve them.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And I'll be sure to post all your contact info in case I haven't done that. So, all right. Thank you very much, Christine. We really appreciate it. Everybody, tomorrow, we're going to have Taylor Walden of Simple and Sentimental as our guest speaker. I think you'll find it interesting. She's a very recent graduate of ECU and has done really well growing her online business. So I encourage everybody to tune in tomorrow as well. All right. Thanks, everybody. See y'all later.
Thanks.
You.